There's a cliche that's now been formed. And the cliche is this. Gen X says it's all about money. Millennials say, where is the money? And Gen Z goes, what is money? Right? Because they have none. Right? So, and it's true. You know, everybody said, oh, these young generations are so materialistic and all this. No, baby boomers are.
I think you are definitely bitter. I think to blame the baby boomers is a little bit short-sighted. I agree that politicians are a problem, but it's not just the left. It's both sides, bro. You can't tell.
You know what I wish would happen? You know how you go into like a Catholic home or Christian, or mostly a Catholic home, and you see like the Last Supper? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or a crucifix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every baby boomer should have a shrine of Ronald Reagan in their house. Because if without Ronald, and then Ronald Reagan comes in and says, look, guys, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be terrible. We're going to make these changes. You're not going to like it. It's going to be a lot of pain. However, let me tell you something. It's morning again.
Welcome to the Family Office. Planning for the people who matter most.
You talked about the lifestyle your parents had. That's the baby boomer generation. I believe the reason why they had the lifestyle they had was not because of trade, was not because of labor, is because of assets and currency. And once in 1971, when the United States went off the gold standard for a time being, just for a little while, that's when the dollar began to become debased. And every economic downfall that every major empire has is because their economy goes down, the prices go up, people began to have civil unrest and trusty roads. That is the definition of a downside. And we see that's what's happening within our economy. And so what happens is when the certain factors begin to happen, like in my case, I'm arguing that when we went away from the gold standard, we as a society have to find someone or something to hate, someone or something to distrust. And in our case, we talk about other people coming to the country and the government and what they're doing. And there is truth and validity to that. But the problem is that we're looking at the wrong variable. I believe that if we were able to get back to a gold standard where now you don't have these massive price fluctuations, now because asset prices would remain fairly stable. But when you can print money at will, there's no free lunch. And that's the reason why the quality of life goes down. But then it's so easy to blame somebody else. That's the danger of it, Chris. That's the issue that I have with your argument.
Right, but we've been headed towards the gold standard being abolished since the onset of the Fed. Right? Central banking. Because that was a precursor to it, because you don't really have fiat banking anymore. You have made up banking now. Banks create money out of nowhere. Banks, you notice the language, right? Banks banks credit your account. They don't deposit in your account, they credit. And one thing I know is in law, the nuance of the language is the most important thing. How it is said is everything in law. So when you look at banking, they know, oh, Len, your account's been credited today. Not, hey, we deposited $4,000. When the bank loans you money, they fund you or they credit you. They don't deposit the money. They make it up. That money came from nowhere. So to me, it's all fiat currency at this point. And that's why I'm such a big fan of cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all of that, because I think that that's more of a free market currency and less manipulative. And look, if the government's opposed to it and Visa and MasterCard are opposed to it and the big banks are opposed to it, then you know it's good.
Yes.
Because it hurts their bottom line.
Yes, that's right. And I think that as the generations begin to shift, the younger generation is going to see more than ever that those different types of non-traditional currencies are going to become more and more a part of their everyday living. And I think I want to talk and shift gears and talk about the generational rift, right? Because there's this divide that's really at a fever pitch. And so when you talk about boomers versus Gen Z, that generational divide is really this whole friction that's being caused because, the values are starting to become split, and the different ways in which boomers versus Gen Z looks at the world is a lot different. And you've got this tension between young and old. And, we're just watching this deeper fracture that's taking place. And I think, as I look at my son and my kids and how bitter they are, because you could buy a house like we talked about in other episodes for, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000, $200,000 was a lot of money. Now that's a down payment. And so even the idea of buying a home and using it as one of the stores of wealth like other generations did, that's becoming a thing of the past. And so I wanted to get your thoughts and your take about this divide between the boomers and Gen Z. And let's kind of dig a little deep in and talk about that.
Well, you said it earlier that the baby boomers inherited or were successful because of different economic times, right? Right. Well, the baby boomers inherited a great manufacturing, strong IP economy post World War II from the greatest generation. And then the baby boomers were selfish, and all they did was just suck that economy dry and lead it into where we're at right now. I mean, there's a cliche that's now been formed. And the cliche is this. Gen X says it's all about money. Millennials say, where is the money? And Gen Z goes, what is money? Right? Because they have none. Right? So, and it's true. Because the baby boomers, look, we talk, the baby boomers are so great. No! The baby boomers have some nerve because they should be looking at this right now and going, what? The greatest generation left us an opportunity to have so much success easily, right? And now they don't even think twice to go, well, what are we leaving for our kids, right? Because you have the Pelosi's, Schumers, Nadlers, all these guys, Bidens, get the hell out of office already. Give it to us. That's why I love when I see J.D. Vance and Hegsa and Power, because I'm like, please, can we please have somebody that's not senile and isn't making $1 billion every day off of insider stock trades? Baby boomers, right? So to me, I'm like, I know I'm a little high strung today.
You sound mad. You sound mad, Chris.
Because I'm just like, how does nobody see this? How does nobody see these people, right? And here's the reality behind the baby boomers, right? That I think, right? And I was never like this, by the way. I used to champion this. Both my parents are baby boomers, 47 and 48, born in 1947 and 48, respectively, right? My mom and dad bought their house in California, in Rancho Penasquitos, California, for $81,000 in 1978, Glenn. $81,000. You know what that property's worth today? That house is worth today? $1.4 million. How the hell am I going to buy that property if I'm a Gen Z or millennial? And albeit, how am I going to buy it if that baby boomer is still living in that house? Because one thing you can tell you is these baby boomers, they're not letting go of their houses. They're not selling their houses. They're not getting rid of them. Sometimes they have 3 or 4 of them, right? 5 of them, right? And they got these big SUVs, these big cars, these big toys. Everybody said, oh, these young generations are so materialistic and all this. No, baby boomers are. Baby boomers are materialistic. I see it all the time. You see baby boomers driving. What business does a baby boomer, 75, 78 years old, driving a Corvette or a Mustang or a muscle car or any of that crap right now? They should be in the Waymo taxi, right? They should be. Now, I'm not saying you should impede on their freedoms, but the baby boomers have done a very poor job of giving the next generation, number one, the baton, because they don't want to let go of it. They just don't. They're stubborn, self-centered. They don't want to let go of that baton. They don't. They just don't want to give the power up, right? They're staying employed, all of these things. And then number 2, they did a very good job of making sure they were good, but they didn't do a very good job of passing it on and paying it forward to the next generation that's going to inherit all their bad decisions. All of them. All their bad decisions. We inherit all of them. So now we got to, number one, figure out how to pay for them, because they don't want to pay for a dime. And then we also have to figure out how to clean up the mess that they left us in, because it's a lot of their fault to deal with it. They've been running the country for the last 30, 40 years. Not me, not you. They have. Look at politics. Look at businesses. Look at all these guys, right? They're the ones that have put America largely in this position. And then when you see it on the street, you could see it. And that's why you said it, your children, respectively, what, 20, mid-20s, late 20s, right?
26, 28.
They're bitter. Why are they bitter? Why are they bitter? Like, think about it this way, perspective this way. I bought my first house when I was 21, okay? And luckily I had a good job. I studied computers. I was a hobby of mine. I turned it into a job, and I wanted to own a home. And I bought it at a time where luckily it was a fraud system, and anybody could get, not to say anybody could buy a house, right? But it was during that era where it was banks were just rubber
stated
stamped,
income,
right?
Stated assets.
Yeah. I mean, I had 3 stated income loans at one point, right? Granted, I was in a position to handle that debt, to service that debt. Enough of that being said, the interesting point is that we are now in a position where people cannot afford to do this stuff. And the reason for that is because we've completely manipulated the system, and we've completely defrauded the system, and we've completely raped the system, and we've lopsided it to one generation. And that's why the greatest wealth transfer is happening. To who? To who? There's no wealth to be transferred anywhere. It's fake. So to me, I just don't see it. I don't understand how the baby boomers can continue to be held in such high esteem when they've left us in this mess and they've given us no solutions to get out of it. So,
okay,
where do you go?
I think you are definitely bitter, and I understand your perspective when you look at the difficulties that Gen Zs and younger millennials are having economically. I think to blame the baby boomers is a little bit short-sighted. And here's what I mean by that. I think that the American cultural ethic and the American belief and ethos is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's rugged individualism. It's find a way to go from rags to riches and take care of yourself. And I think what's been lost in that message is the idea of thinking more collectively and thinking more broadly about others besides yourself. And I think that when you talk about the inheritance that baby boomers are not providing for their children, I think it's also a byproduct of the economic woes that has happened that's unprecedented. When you look at the quote unquote greatest generation, and then you look at the baby boomers, the question is how did those generations take place? What were some of the factors and variables that created that? Well, the greatest generation was created really during wartime. What was going on during wartime? You had defense. You had companies like McDonnell Douglas and companies like Lockheed Martin building all of these different airplanes and warships and all of these things. So what does that do? Well, you've got to have materials to do that. So people had to mine the materials. People had to manufacture the raw materials and turn it into a ship or a plane. And so then you also had to have the people that build those materials. Then you had the people that delivered those materials, people that sold those materials. And so war has been one of the biggest reasons why the United States has become a global superpower. And so the baby boomers and the generation before that was a real byproduct of that. And so then over time, technology began to rise. And so fewer people could be more productive. And so therefore the need for as many workers, you don't have these big factory assembly lines making planes and trains and automobiles like you had before. So now money that went to their hands, talking about the greatest generation and the baby boomers, that's a different financial and economic context. And so because then you had the New Deal that happened, where that was signed, and then, this whole idea of Social Security became a factor. But the thing about Social Security is that Social Security was offered for people that was age 65, but life expectancy was somewhere around 62 at that point. And so now you've got this technology that allows people to live longer. And so now more people are starting to take money away from the Social Security system because they're living longer. It was never that fund was never created with the intention of people living on Social Security for 10, 15, 20 years, and the complete number of people that would take out of that system versus a number of people putting into that system. So you had these baby boomers who are, somewhere around 80 million strong. And then you've got the Gen Xers, which is half of that number. And then you've got Gen Z, which is somewhere around 70 to 75 million. And so now you've got these ebbs and flows in the population growth. And because of that, it's creating these massive inequalities, as it relates to economic prosperity. And that's the reason why the younger generation's feeling the brunt of it, because we haven't created an economic context for them to prosper and grow because of efficiencies. And so we've almost become a prisoner or a victim of our own success. And unless we find a way to really get that next generation involved in our economic prosperity, this country is going to have a massive, massive fall economically. And I'm very, very concerned about the next generation after Gen Z. And so you're right to be bitter. I understand where it comes from, but I think to blame them, they're just byproducts of not having the ability to have foresight because they've been taught to just think about themselves. And that's why China is probably going to be the next superpower that takes over. And I hate to say that, but that's really what's happening. That's where we're headed as a society.
So if the captain of the ship crashes, if the ship crashes, whose fault is it? It's the captain of the ship, right?
Captain. Yeah.
Absolutely. The baby boomers have been the captain of the ship.
Okay. I understand that. I think that's a good argument, but the captain that drove their ship didn't teach them, and they just happened to be in a good situation. They were the benefactors of great circumstances.
Okay. So look at it this way. Baby boomers, 74% of baby boomers own homes. Okay. 74%, right? And 37% of all home ownership nationwide is baby boomers, despite there being only 20% of the population. Mm-hmm. So clearly there's something going on here, right? And that all comes down to the fact that these baby boomers were at the captain of the ship when all these sweeping changes were made in America through the 70s, through the 80s, and through the 90s. And now we've arrived at ourselves at this time right now where we've got all these bad policy decisions that have been made over the last last few decades, and we're paying the price for that. We're paying the price for NAFTA. We're paying the price for world trade agreements that are bad. We're paying the price for not looking at tariffs more closely. We're paying the price for all of these things, and what we've seen is a massive amount of wealth get repatriated to other countries, manufacturing, all the goodies, everything that's happened as a result has gone to these baby boomers, and they have allowed this fleecing to happen. And they didn't care about it because they already owned their homes. They already had their pensions. They already had all their stockpiles that they had. They don't care because they just don't. And they are leaving us not with a bad situation, with a horrible situation. And that's okay, because I myself, I'm not bitter with it. For me, I'm just like, how dare you? Because you got handed a great opportunity, and then you don't even have the audacity to say, you know what, guys, we're sorry, we'll give you a better opportunity. Like, have you actually tried to have a conversation with a baby boomer about anything sensible? Like, it is the most one-sided conversation. Like, it's just crazy to me how that generation thinks. And it's just, yeah, to me, it's like, I think that they completely have lost touch. And you can see it in the political leaders. When you look at political leaders today, most of them are baby boomers, and most of them are out of touch. Like, for example, if I was to ask my 5-year-old, 6-year-old daughter to draw me a picture of a politician, they'd probably draw me a pale, stale white man. That's what they'd draw me. That's what she'd draw me. Because that's what most people think. Or a witch of a woman. And I'm sorry if I insulted anybody out there, but realistically, that's what they are. I mean, they are. They're not nice. They're not polite. They're not caring. None of them. And by the way, I have baby boomer parents, right? But to me, it's like, what has happened so badly to this generation that they could be so self-centered and so unapologetic about what condition they're leaving not just the country, but the world in. So that's kind of just my biggest gripe.
What would you suggest as a solution to, moving forward? If you could just, sprinkle some pixie dust on the entire baby boomer generation, do you have any suggestions about how we can make it better?
Well, I was just going to say before you said that point, which is a great point, Len. I love your question on that. I love the situation we're in because I'm a capitalist and I'm an opportunist and I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm going to find out a way to solve a problem. And whoever figures out how to solve the most problems and the biggest problems makes the most money. So to me, I like it. So I'm like, bring it on, baby. Let's do this, right? Come on, right? Because I can tell you at this, I'm not really worried about the next generation, Len. Like you said, I'm worried about the next generation coming up to Gen Z because I know most of my kids are that next generation. Or what is it, Gen Alpha or whatever, right? I think it's called Gen Alpha, right? I think that's the next generation.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will tell you while you're looking that up that I am excited for Gen Alpha because I live with a bunch of Gen Alpha kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 19. I think my oldest is considered a Zennial. Like, she's like right in the middle of the Zennial. Like, she's hardcore. But having said that, the young Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, I'm excited for them because their way of thinking is so much better than Gen Z and even millennial thinking. Mm-hmm. They are so stoic. They're so forward thinking. But at the same time, they're progressive and forward thinking, but they have conservative base. They look at people like Joe Biden. They look at people like Pelosi, and they go, those people are absolutely insane. Right? That's what they say. This is my kids saying this. I say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Insane, right? I think, well, that's a pretty strong word, right? But they're not lazy. They're very driven, and they're tech savvy. And I think this generation is going to be at the tip of the spear, and there's going to be a renaissance in America like you've never seen before. Short term, what my solution is, I'm a big fan of what Trump's doing with the tariffs. I know you and I disagree with that. But trade volume is massively up since the beginning of the year. Trillions of dollars. Let me see. Hold on.
I'm telling you, look at the actual numbers, because one thing that you've been bashing on the left a lot this conversation, and I've been quiet.
Index trading, January 25 saw a total trading volume of $54 trillion with an average daily volume of 20.3% year over year.
Okay.
And the options market activity. So to realize to see this,
but that doesn't speak to necessarily the level of success, because oftentimes when the value of that currency that's being traded goes down, you need more of it. So I'm really interested to see what's the quality of life look like for the average everyday American, because one thing is that, you just mentioned index, and most people don't look at that as, okay, how does that impact my gas prices? How does that impact the cost of my food? How does that impact the cost of the goods and services that I have to buy to keep my house afloat? And unfortunately,
I can tell you, I can tell you, Len, gas is for 93 in Texas is $2.43 a gallon. Okay.
Talk about food and going to and things like that. Talk about that.
Perfect. I can take myself, my wife, and my 6 children to In-N-Out for less than $100.
and compare that to 5 years ago.
I can't give you a price of it 5 years ago, but to me, I could give you this. In California, it was $125 for the same order.
But that's state to state, and I understand where you're going with that argument.
Housing prices.
But what I'm saying is that the overall price of goods and services, if you index that, the computer priced index, the CPI, countrywide has significantly gone up. And the reason why I bring that point up is because it's not one side versus the other. It's both. They're both contributing to the demise of our economy. Both sides are. And so when you look at all of the politicians that have been in office over and over, they're not listening to their constituents. They're not listening to the local folks talking about the concerns they have. And so I agree that politicians are a problem, but it's not just the left. It's both sides, bro. You can't tell.
You know what I wish would happen? You know how you go into like a Catholic home or a Christian, or mostly a Catholic home, and you see like the Last Supper? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or a crucifix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every baby boomer should have a shrine of Ronald Reagan in their house, because if without Ronald Reagan doing what he did in the 80s and getting us out of the mess that look how fast Jimmy Carter plummeted this country, right? Just like, right? And then Ronald Reagan comes in and he says, look, guys, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be terrible. We're going to make these changes. You're not going to like it. It's going to be a lot of pain. However, let me tell you something. It's morning again. It's morning again. The night is over. And I think what you're seeing here is, and obviously you can't compare apples to apples because it's different problems, different economic times.
Yeah, because housing interest rates during his tenure was upwards of 19%.
Well, he inherited that from Jimmy Carter. I mean, you inherited those higher interest rates, but ultimately what happened was time changes, and as a result, it takes time, right? Like, for example, you can't lose 100 pounds in 2 weeks, right? It's going to take you a year probably to lose that weight if you're on an aggressive protocol. However, by the end of his term, Bill Clinton comes in office, and what happens? Bam! The country is on fire. You have a small little blip in the early 90s, but the country is on fire all throughout the 90s. Until what happens? The crony capitalism comes in again, and manipulation. And oddly enough, it all happens in California. Enron, MCI, all that crap that happened. The tech bubble. It all happens in California for some reason, right? For some reason. But Clinton inherits the massive productivity value that Clinton creates, or that Reagan creates. Clinton was a good steward of that throughout the 90s, right? And then you have, Bush comes in, and then Obama trashes it. Right, and Bush, I was not a fan. I'm not a fan of Bush.
He did not do well in the economy, bro.
Unnecessary wars. The biggest gift that Bush got was 9/11. That's what created his popularity. That's what created his. Again, to your point, Len, which you're correct. Wars are very profitable for countries that win them, and very profitable for countries that are involved in them. Bush rode the coattails of 9/11 and all the endless Iraq, Middle Eastern wars that we're still in. Right, that's the cronyism that happened. And I think that's right where we're at right now again with Trump. You may not like it. It is painful. It's ugly. It's going to be shitty. But I can promise you whoever inherits it after him is going to have such an easier time. Because to the point of so many people, and I'm not bashing on the left or anything, but everyone on the left unanimously said, oh my God, Trump is the enemy of democracy and he's going to have a recession on day one and all this thing, just like they said in his first term. I think it was, whoever it was, right? He said it. Oh my God, we're going to be in war and he's going to launch a nuclear war. None of it happened.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I agree from the standpoint that the left is really bad about being anti-Trump because they don't have a pro message. 100% agree with that. I don't believe that the first 200 days that Trump has been in office is going to turn out 4 years of prosperity. The way things are going right now, I think the erosion of trust within, see what you're thinking about is purely the economic benefits that Trump is creating, because you look at the world through a Republican lens. And I think the challenge with that is that along with the economic prosperity that policies have created for a small number of people, larger numbers of people are not feeling the positive impact of that. And there's been more distrust. His ratings are worse this term than they were the first term in terms of likability, acceptance, trust, and all of those things. And so when you look at those factors and you look at the erosion of trust from the different sides and the sides becoming more and more polar opposites, I think the rhetoric that he spews is creating a tinderbox, because when he talks about, for example, in Washington, D.C., there's these roving thugs and they're roaming the street and they'll slit your throats and all of, like, using rhetoric like that from the position of the presidency is a problem, because now you're creating seeds of hatred using your words. And I think that he's got to temper it down a bit, because the words that he uses have power, and people who have power using it ineffectively or using it for the wrong purposes to promote an agenda, dehumanizing groups of people, that's going to create more problems in the future. And so you could have great short-term numbers for tariffs and all of those things, but if the country is hating each other from within inside, there's not going to be a country to prosper. It's just going to continue to erode. And if he continues down the path that he's going down, I fear for what year 2, 3, and 4 will look like.
I don't think he's the only one guilty of rhetoric. And you have Maxine Waters, kick them while they're down.
Yeah, but she's not a president. She's not a president.
It doesn't matter, though.
Okay, but
wait a minute, hold on. But Joe Biden said the same thing. He's a thug, and people are thugs. And Joe Biden said the same rhetoric too. They all say the same rhetoric.
You can't compare the type of rhetoric. Now, again, I'm not a Biden fan, but I'm saying you cannot compare the rhetoric that Trump has versus the rhetoric that Biden has. Those two aren't even the same. Now, if you bring in a firebrand like, I'm saying what I see with my own eyes.
He's been so vilified for so long. The press is so negative about it. He's been vilified upways, sideways, downways. I agree with that.
I agree with that. I am telling you, listen, Chris, I am telling you that I agree with you, the fact that he has been vilified, and a lot of times, media's, on the left, like the MSNBCs and the CNNs, they don't find anything positive to say about him. In our conversations, I'm telling you that I want him to be successful. I want him to have success. I've said that before. So I'm not going to look at everything he does through the lens of saying that everything he does is bad. I am telling you that what I see with my own eyes, I'm only speaking for me. What I see with my own eyes is that the rhetoric he spews is problematic. The rhetoric that he spews, it doesn't build bridges, it builds silos. And I think that that's a problem given where we are right now as a country. When you look at what happens when the economic system starts to erode and prices go up, people are looking for reasons to point the finger, to cast blame. And what will happen is that if this rhetoric continues to go up and it continues to get more and more widespread, people begin to adopt these views. And I'm saying that's what I see with my own eyes. I think I like the fact, okay, let me talk positively about him. I like the fact that he doesn't care what people think. I like the fact that he speaks his mind from the standpoint of getting what he wants when he's talking to other leaders. I like the fact that he doesn't look at tradition and say, I have to be a certain way. But what I don't like is when he when he pits groups of people against each other and when he pits one party against the other. I think that we need to have a president, especially now more than ever, that's a unifying president between the left and the right. And like I said, I'm independent, so I don't have a dog in the fight for the right or the left. Neither of them are my party. But when I look at things, that's why I look at the issues and I look at the individual. And what I see with this individual, he has a golden opportunity to take a country that's going in a bad direction economically and to use the people within it to help guide the economic prosperity to allow us to be number one again. Even though we're number one on paper, we're not the fastest growing economy, not even close. When you look at what China's doing and how they're growing compared to how America's growing, it's just a matter of time. We're in decline. And so we need to be able to take time to sit back and say, okay, what can we do to change the trajectory? And the way we change the trajectory is to work together. And I'll close with this, is that in Fantastic Four, and I was watching it yesterday, there was an existential threat to the world. And what they had to do is all the countries had to come together to work hand in hand to stop this existential threat from taking place, from taking over and ruling the world. And when we look at the country, we're being compromised by various existential threats. When you look at China, when you look at India, when you look at other countries that are rising and being in a position to take over, we need to come together and unite. We can't continue to thrive divided. And I just think that a lot of what's being said on both sides of the aisle, they need to tone it down a little bit and they need to think about more ways to come together. And that's why I like these conversations that you and I have, because, again, you and I disagree on so many different things, but at the same time, we understand that there's value in listening. Like when you talk, even though I may disagree with a lot of your points, I listen to hear what you have to say. And I'm not trying to create a counter argument. I'm trying to look at the world through your lens while you're talking to get an understanding of why you see the world the way you do. And just like this entire time, you haven't jumped in. You haven't tried to cut me off. You've listened. And I think more dialogue needs to happen that way.
I totally agree. And here's my closing on that, and we could transition off this because we're talking about this guy way too much. The best thing about this is that either of us are part of the two-party system. You're not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. You're an independent. I'm a libertarian, right? So both of us are rooted in those philosophies respectively. I just think that I don't look at it as what's right and wrong. I look at it right now as what's most effective, to the point of we got to get out of the situation we're in right now. And also to your point, 200 days. 200 days is not enough to change the course in which he inherited. He inherited a crap show. We all know that. I mean, the numbers were horrible when he got into office, right? And the numbers were great when Biden got into it. Granted, there was some COVID effect going on and all that stuff, right? But to the point is that he is and was the most qualified candidate on that ticket during that season. There's no way. Kamala couldn't even get herself out of the paper bag. This is the most manufactured, propped up candidate. We don't even need to talk about that, right? I mean, she blew through over $1 billion, right? That's waste. And now Gavin Newsom's paying for her security detail that she doesn't even need, and we're going to make a big deal out of it. And again, that lends you to baby boomer syndrome. What does she need it for, right? I don't want to get on that subject or anything, but you're absolutely right, Ren. We need to turn this around. Now, why is he so brash, and why is he so much like that? Number one, he's always been like that. But number two, I think that's the way the world stage is right now. I mean, you've got aggressors like Putin. You've got aggressors like Iran. You've got aggressors like China. You've got aggressors all over the world, and these guys aren't nice. They are just not nice. And I think that you need someone like that right now with that attitude and that brashness to go in and say, no, guys, bang, 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 spank, spank, spank. And I think that's what he's doing. Now, is it as much as the way we've talked about this? Would I like more polish and eloquency? Yes, I would. Would I like more of that stuff? Because I am that way. I don't want to come out there. But at the same time, I think he's the most effective person for the job given the current situation and climate. I would prefer to have someone like a JD Vance as president, just simply because I like that he's younger. I like his attitude. I like the smarts. I like he has the polish without the a-hole attitude and the self-centeredness. We can't forget here, Trump is a baby boomer too. Okay, so right, he's got that weirdness in him. So he's got that baby boomer wiring. So you got to look at, I think, at all those perspectives. Do I think he's the best man for the job right now still? Yes. Do I agree with everything? No. I think that one of us will have a very big smile in 2 or 3 years when we see the breadth of the domain, and I just can't wait to see that, because the proof is always in the pudding. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to make a change. We absolutely do, because at the end of the day, no one in the rest of the world has the fundamental core values that America's system and culture has, and that's what scares me the most. Because again, the general operating system of America is based on loosely, I mean, obviously, on what freedoms and perceptions you have. I want to have a freedom and economic, but I think he's the best person for the job at this point. Do I agree with everything? No. Do I agree with anybody else put in that position? No. And given the current election cycle, there was nobody that was going to be electable at that point that could do better than he's doing, or could do better than what he's going to do, I think, potentially. So that's my last bow on that one.
Time will tell all, and only thing that we know is that time will tell. And so, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, hey, Chris, it's been a great conversation. I know we had another topic on the docket, but I know it's getting late in the day. So we'll table that till next time, because I'm looking forward to having that conversation.
Yes. And, yes.
For sure. So we'll table that till next week. Listen, it's been great. I hope that all of you that have been watching has had an opportunity to get some value from different perspectives. And I hope that you take this information, have different conversations with people. If you like what you heard, give us a like, subscribe, put a bell on it so you can get notified every single time. And then also make sure that you have conversations with people that you don't agree with all the time, so you can see perspectives through other people's eyes. You can ultimately end up agreeing to disagree, but also take time to hear their perspective. So with that being said, take care, everybody. Until next time.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.